Hey everyone, before we start the show, I just want to get some plugs out of the way. If you enjoy this podcast and you're into wrestling, check out the Nerds and Marks podcast or Marty and Sarah Love Wrestling. If you're not getting your fill on movie and entertainment discussion, then check out the Entertainment Buffet podcast. If you want to dive into the world of video games, I highly recommend the Darkcast by my friends over at darkstation.com. Listen to them cover important topics and interview men and women from all over the industry. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Shelved Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Meyer. We're doing another solo script episode today. Now, originally, I did have a guest for this episode, but I actually asked him not to read the script because today we are covering a script that is a little timely, but it is the script for It. And this is for the movie that is out in theaters, but it's a draft from 3/18/2014. Now, it's written by Chase Palmer and Cary Fukunaga. I hope I'm saying that last name right. And the story is, originally, Cary Fukunaga was going to direct it, and he wrote the script with Chase Palmer, but he had to drop out for some reason or another. I don't actually know the reason. It might have been creative differences. It might have just been a timing thing. Like, this is pretty common for stuff in Hollywood. People drop out all the time for different reasons. But the story is he dropped out, and they brought in this new director who now directed the movie, and they brought in another writer for rewrites. So the movie that is out now currently has Chase Palmer, Cary Fukunaga, and another writer on as the writers. So basically, he took this draft and rewrote it into the movie that is out now. So I asked my guest, who's a huge horror fan. He's been on before. It was my friend Vinny, owner of the Cryptic Closet. So be sure to check out thecrypticcloset.com if you want some awesome horror themed apparel and pins and hats and stuff. But yeah, he was going to read it with me. But I started reading it first, and he was super excited to see the movie. I mean, we both are, but I'm a little less like intimidated by spoilers, I guess. And I told him, I'm like, hey man, like, I'm reading this script, and parts of this are like matching the trailer bit for bit. So if you don't want to read it, that's fine. I will just handle this one myself. And he was gonna see the movie Friday night, which was when we were supposed. I wanted to record on Thursday, so. He decided to opt out as to not spoil the movie for him. Now I shall say, at the time of this recording, I have not seen it yet. I probably won't be able to see it for a couple weeks, unfortunately. I am dying to see it, especially after reading this. But I can tell you a couple of my friends have seen it, and I've asked them some questions comparing the script to the movie, and there are definitely moments in the script that match the movie identically. For example, the basement scene that's in the trailer where the kid Georgie is sitting there saying, "You'll float too, you'll float too." That is all like word for word the scene in the trailer is word for word in the script. So I definitely know that some of this is still in the movie versus how much of it has changed. Because I started asking my friend, like, oh, this scene here that I read, is that in the movie? And he was telling me no. I think like 3 of the scenes that I really liked in the script that I asked him about were not in the movie. And he told me that he had heard that this script had to be rewritten to go down from an NC-17. And like reading it, it's definitely graphic and gory and stuff, but it doesn't feel like NC-17 for me. I feel like it's pretty hard to get an NC-17 nowadays, but I don't know. But we're gonna get into it. So I am gonna be doing this one by myself, and I do just want to let people know, if you haven't seen the new It yet, there are possibly spoilers. As I said, some of these scenes are exactly as they are in the trailer. I did rewatch the trailer and saw that there was a lot of stuff that wasn't in the script, so it's going to be, I don't know how much of it is there, but there's definitely some stuff that was rewritten and made. I can see stuff that is similar to the script but different in the movie. They actually like rewrote it to make it a little better. So just a big fat spoiler warning right out of the gate. It's not going to be complete spoilers, but some of this stuff will be in the movie, so proceed with caution. If you want to wait until you've seen the movie, that's up to you. If you want to go knowing that it is different, that's fine. I mean, we all know the story of it, so it's kind of hard to spoil something that we know. Something that some people may not know is this entire script and the movie is entirely when they are kids. Because if you know the story of it, if you've seen the old movie, if you read the book, which I have not read the book, I did see the old movie recently, which will be talked about on an upcoming podcast. I guess I can cover that here now, actually, because I put out a tweet about this, but I haven't said it on the show yet. But in the month of October, every year I like to do something called Shocktober, where every day in October you watch a horror movie. But I want to carry that on in the podcast form. So in October, every day, we are going to release a short podcast, 10 to 15 minutes at most. But each podcast is basically going to be like a little movie review for a horror movie. But I do it every year. It's something I hardly ever make all 31 days. So this year I plan on doing it, and I'm going to have a different horror movie review every day in October. So there'll be a lot of bonus episodes in October. So be sure to check those out, especially if you're a horror fan. But October is my favorite time of year, and come September, I'm always getting the itch to watch a bunch of horror movies. So I've actually been like pre-gaming some of them because obviously I don't have time to watch a movie every day and record a podcast every day. So I'm actually starting now. I've already watched 4 films, and I'm going to record those podcasts after this one. But those will start dropping in October. So every day in October, there will be a review for another horror movie, and I'm going for movies I haven't seen. I'm trying to get some classics out of the way that I've never seen that I really wanted to watch. I bought this movie pack of like 25 horror movies for like $10 or whatever. I'm gonna watch some of those. There's some newer ones, some classic ones on there. It's usually a bunch of garbage, but some will come off there. Some will probably be random Netflix picks. There is one that is a rewatch because it's one I watch every year. So I actually watched that last night. So there'll be like 1 or 2 that I've seen before, but I try to get as many new movies for me as I've seen. And so far, 3 of them I have not seen. So 3 out of 4 ain't bad. But so look out for that in the month of October. I'll just tell you right now, the first one is going to be the original It, the 1990 miniseries. So look for that, starting October 1st, going all the way to Halloween. But let's get into the script. Let's get into it. So as I said, I haven't seen the movie. I'm dying to. I really want to see it. This version starts pretty much how you see the first teaser trailer start with Georgie out on the street. It shows that like Will loves Georgie, which when I watched the original the TV miniseries, it kind of felt like when he was giving Georgie the boat, he was kind of, brushing him off and just like, oh, I'm sick and I hate you. Like, go away, annoying little brother. But in this one, it's like, oh man, I wish I could go out with you. But he's stuck in bed. I will say, so this script and the movie that's out are supposed to be closer to the book. I have not read the book. I did read the Wikipedia for the book, but that doesn't obviously give me some details. It does seem closer, still its own thing. So I definitely feel like you can read all of these things and watch all of these things and have a different experience with each one, which is good because I actually really want to read the book right now. So yeah, the movie opens with the Georgie scene. So Georgie gets the boat from Will. Like the TV miniseries, there's a scene where he has to go in the basement and grab the stuff to make the boat float, and he just runs in real quick and runs out. Here it's a little drawn out, and as he runs in, you see from its point of view as he's watching him from the corner. So they kind of already are drawing it out, making it a little more cinematic, a little more creepy. So it kind of opens up the way you expect. Georgie loses the boat. If you've seen the teaser trailer, it's exactly as it is in that teaser trailer, except I don't think he hits his head on the guardrail thing, because that cracks me up in the trailer, and I know it's not supposed to be played for comedy, but it's just so funny to me the way they edited it in the trailer. But yeah, we see Pennywise. He pops up and he offers him the boat. One thing that is interesting to me is they show what happens to Georgie versus like the TV movie they don't. And if you know anything about what happens is it eats off his arm is what happens. And in this, you see like the camera view shifts to inside like a neighbor's house, and you see Georgie out the window in the background, and all of a sudden he starts getting like thrashed back and forth, which I really like. I like that it doesn't hold back. It's a little fucked up. It was a good way to start the movie. So then we get introduced to Mike, who is the young black kid in the movie, and he's working with his dad. They're like sheep slaughterers. Mike wants to go to school, but he's like homeschooled. His dad wants to, for some reason, it's never explained that much, wants to keep him at home and working and doesn't think school is valuable. But Mike wants some friends and stuff. So then we jump to the school and we meet our like main group of kids. So we got Will, we got Eddie, who's kind of the one with the EpiPen, and he's, what's a hypochondriac basically. We got Stan, who's the Jewish kid, and that comes in a little later. And he's all proper and well dressed all the time. That's kind of how they describe his character. And then we got Richie, who is Will's neighbor and is like obsessed with video games and stuff. They say that in the script, but it never really comes out. And the first thing to point out in this is all of these kids have the filthiest mouths I have ever seen. There's a lot of that running throughout the script. I don't know what he was going for while writing this, but it's just a lot of really bad language. And I know kids swear, and obviously they're kids written by adults. They're going to be a little more adult. Plus, they're the heroes of our story, so they kind of have to be. And this, I think they're all a little older than they would normally be. I think some of them they're closer to teenagers than they are in the original book and stuff. But it's just a little offsetting at first how everybody is just like, oh god, like for example, this is actually one of the bullies, but so this summer's gonna be a hurt train for you and your faggot friends. Let's roll. We got a lard ass to find. And it's just like, Jesus, like right off the bat, everybody is just throwing out. They say, I hate the word, but they say faggot a lot in this. And there's just lots of fucks, and there's just no holding back. It's a little crazy. Like, I have a pretty bad mouth. I'm sure if you've heard the podcast, I drop swears left and right. Like, it's no big deal. There are words I don't like, and faggot is one of them. But it's crazy. So we also get introduced to Beverly, who we see a lot of girls talking about how like, she's a whore and she's got cock breath and stuff like that. But Beverly meets Ben, who is one of the other kids. He's the chunky one, because you always got to have that little fat kid. And Ben takes notice of Beverly pretty early on, and they have a actually pretty funny first introduction where she sees him. They're like talking, and he sees that she has a bruise on her arm, and she notices that he notices, and she's like, I slipped in the shower. What's your excuse? And he's like, I fell on 3 boxes of donuts. And I thought that was funny. Like, that made me laugh. But yeah, so that's kind of the introduction to all of our kids. It's going to be a little while before they all come together, but for the most part, we have Eddie, Stan, Will, and Richie, who are all kind of friends right off the bat. And then we get introduced to our group of bullies. So we have Travis, and then we have his sidekicks, Snatch, Patrick, and Victor. I'm probably going to forget a lot of these names as we go. So some of them will just be introduced as, one of the bullies. Yeah, because there's a lot of characters in it, and it's kind of amazing that a script manages to like give all of these characters their due time, and it doesn't feel like it's dragging on. But I'm always a big fan of character stuff. So we start meeting some of their parents and stuff. Like, Will's parents are basically absent after Georgie's death. Like, they pretty much ignore him. Anytime somebody touches Georgie's shit, they flip out. We meet Eddie's mom, and she feels like when I was reading this, she's like really fat, and she's doing a puzzle on her belly, and she's just gross, and it felt like Rob Zombie wrote this character. But it's interesting. And then we learn that Ben likes to hang out at the library, doesn't really have a lot of friends, and he's been learning the history of the town Derry, where they all live and where it is terrorizing them. We see Beverly's fucked up household, which kind of it feels like it's stretching to be gross here. Like, first of all, a theme of a couple of these characters is coming into adulthood, like Beverly getting her first period, and Stan reading the Jewish thing where you read the Torah or whatever, and you become a man. His bar mitzvah. So those are kind of themes early on for these characters, and one of the reasons why it kind of targets them. Okay, so I'm trying to keep track with my notes here as I trail off. I lose my place. Okay, so Stan is learning for his bar mitzvah, and he's actually the first one to meet it. He has to go to the bathroom, and he goes downstairs. He's at a synagogue, and he's looking for the bathroom, and a naked woman comes. There's like a fountain, and he can't find the bathroom, so he starts peeing in this fountain, and naked woman like rises out of the water, and this is obviously it, and we see her back is all deformed and fucked up and like burned or something, and she's like basically, trying to seduce him, and he runs away, and the idea is, he's becoming a man, so it's a naked woman that approaches him. Like I said, these are some of the themes and the way it plays at them. So yeah, Stan runs out, and we cut back to Ben at the library, and this is something it's in the original TV miniseries. I assume it's in the book as well, but Ben hears about how writing is just as good as reading, and he writes Beverly a poem, and this I assume will also come back in the sequel. But it says, "Your hair is winter fire, January embers. My heart burns there too." And he ends up mailing it to her. We also get introduced to a one-armed man who asks about a kids section, which was something that'll come up later but isn't important now. But just remember, hey, there's a one-armed guy who's kind of creepy. So as Ben is leaving the library, the bullies catch up with him and they chase him down and start fucking with him. They are holding him up with a knife on a bridge, and a car drives by, and it says we see it in the back of the car. Like, it's like this old couple, and they're kind of ignoring what's going on. But it kind of rises up out of the seat. If you watch the trailer, this scene is in there, but instead of it rising up, a balloon rises up, which I think is a little more interesting. It's a better way to do it. But Ben ends up escaping by throwing himself off the bridge. He finds like a hubcap, and he frisbees it into Travis's face. And then Travis like loses the knife he had that he was holding up against Ben. So they're trying to find it in the stream. And then we cut to like another part of the forest, and the kids are all hanging out making a dam at another part of the stream. And they end up finding one of the missing kids' sneakers. So I should point out, kids have been disappearing around town, obviously because it is getting to them. And they find the sneaker of one of the kids. So they start looking for this kid, Dorsey is his last name, but Ben ends up showing up. And this is where Ben kind of joins the group. And he's all beat up and fucked up, so like, we need to help him. So they're riding into town, and they pass by Mike, who's delivering around town. And when they rush past him, they call him Homeschool. So they know Mike, but they're not like friendly, but they're not like assholes to him. They just call him Homeschool. So the bullies are still looking for the knife at the river, and they end up seeing Mike, and they're like, we'll just say that he stole it, and they call him an N-word, which again is like this fucking language, and the script goes real out of the way to make these bullies the worst people imaginable, mostly Travis. But they end up chasing Mike, and he goes to an old ironworks place, and this is one of my favorite parts of the script. Okay, so Mike sees a plaque there about how there was like an explosion and it killed 88 children or something, which, hey, 88 children, we know what probably happened to them. So it's supposed to be a hint at it. And you see it, like Mike, there's like a boarded up section, and it is like behind it as Mike is looking, but he doesn't see it. So Mike ends up dodging the bullies and escaping. And when the bullies go to leave, one of them is kind of in a trance. Hochstetler, I think it's Patrick, he wants to stay and go inside the factory. Like, he finds a balloon and an Easter egg painted with blood that nobody seems to notice. And so the other boys end up leaving him, and he walks into the dark factory, and he's like using a lighter and a spray can to illuminate the scene, and every time he like sprays it, you see, as he gets deeper inside the ironworks or whatever, you see like pieces of bodies and flashes of it. And I actually, there's again, this is an example of some really weird dialogue where he's like asking if they're ghosts. It's I'm gonna read this part from the script right here, and it says, Hochstetler, I ain't afraid. Any of you ghosts down here can't hurt me. It says, as if it were a mantra to make himself feel less scared. And it says, Hochstetler, dialogue continued, I see ghosts. I did them in their buttholes. Which is just like, come on. Like, is that what you're gonna say to be threatening? But then out of the darkness, we hear Pennywise say, did they float? And that's our first time like hearing Pennywise speak. Which Pennywise in this, they describe him in such a great way. And just seeing the trailer and picturing that version, I think obviously people have a lot of praise for the Tim Curry version of Pennywise. But this is going to be, I think, one of the greater movie villains of all time. So I'm excited to see it. And like, he ends up killing this kid, and it's like a really great scene. Like, I love stuff like that where you're like going into the dark and you're seeing little flashes of stuff, and it's awesome. And like, as he kills them, we see like a ton of dead children are there from all the ones he killed. So the gang go to the pharmacy, and they're getting bandages for Ben, which they end up stealing. While they're inside, they don't have enough money, so Eddie fakes an allergic reaction to distract the clerk, and Beverly had showed up, so Beverly like steals all the stuff for them, and that's where Beverly kind of joins the group. But they hit Eddie with the EpiPen, which I have a question. Anybody who knows anything about EpiPens, because I don't, I was always under the impression that if you use an EpiPen when you don't need it, it can be very bad for you. So the idea of using it for a distraction, I don't know if anybody knows. I'm not going to bother to research it, but let me know if you know. Okay, so they go from here to the police station. Stan actually, before they go, he shows up fresh from his encounter with it. And the cops are at the police station. They turn in the shoe, and they're like, hey, we found the shoe. And they basically just like, thanks for being a good Samaritan. And then we actually find out Travis's dad is one of the cops here. I don't think he's the sheriff. He's like the deputy, or he might be the sheriff. But yeah, so then we get, another instance of weird dialogue where they're telling each other not to fag out. And then he's like, fag you later. It's like, I don't understand that at all. So, we see Will go home, and we see that he is just like completely neglected without his brother, like talking about a vacation that they take every year, and his parents are just kind of ignoring him. And then we cut to Beverly's house, and she has her encounter with it in the bathroom. So if you remember the original TV version, the blood coming out of the sink, it's a similar scene, except this time she hears a chorus of voices coming out of the sink. And so she goes and gets her father's tape measure and starts putting it in the drain. And as it's like coming up, you see like at a certain point it hit like blood. So the tape measure is covered in blood. And then blood just starts to fountain out of the sink, and she freaks out. And her dad comes in, and he clearly can't see the blood. And there's definitely some heavy pedophilia implications with her dad. I don't know if that's in the book. I think it is, but her dad seems like a really bad dude. So then we get Will at home. We get our basement scene, which is exactly as it is in the trailer, which is fucking such a good scene. If you've seen the trailer, you know the moment. And so kind of the setup after that is after it chases him he just runs out of the basement and shuts the door. And then his dad comes in, and he tells his dad to check the flooded basement. But his dad goes down there and is like walking around in the water and clearly doesn't see it. Like, he's like, hey, why are you saying it's flooded? It's not flooded. But Will sees him walking in like shin high water. So something's up. So Beverly wakes up, and she still has dried blood on her and realizes that it wasn't a dream. The police bring in Mike for questioning to the missing bully. And like as they're like taking him in, Mike's dad is protesting and ends up having a heart attack. Then we cut to the boys are all hanging out in Ben's room talking about the history of the town. We find out that there's just been like the original settlement all disappeared, and one house was burned down. And it's at the corner where It Took Georgie is where that house was burned down. So obviously there's some relation there. Then all the boys and Beverly all go swimming in a quarry, and we see glimpses of Pennywise in the water. There's a lot of just like character development in this middle part. They all start sunbathing and share their experiences, talking about when they encountered something strange in the town. And then Beverly brings them home and just to see if they can see all the blood, which is still in the bathroom, and they can. So like they all kind of believe, so they all help her clean up the blood. And this is actually a kind of a cool scene. Some of the kids are on the lookout from her dad, and when her dad comes home, they're like, oh shit, he's here, you gotta go. So they all sneak out the window, and he like picks up one of these bloody rags and wipes his face, and there's like blood on his face, but he doesn't see it, So, a little bit of creepy stuff. So Mike ends up getting released by the police. He gives a statement, which puts Travis in trouble, and implied his dad's gonna whip his ass. But one interesting thing is all the kids show up, and they actually try to tell the police, like, hey, there's something happening, like something's going on, and obviously the police just don't believe them because they don't have proof of anything, so they're just like, what can we do? So then the movie jumps to July, and we find out that and I guess I should say that the movie started with a June title card, so now we're in July. I think it's actually only like a couple, like a week or two later. So we find out that Mike's dad, Leroy, is dying of bone cancer. And he tells us a story about when he was a kid and his friend Dick, and they were at like a party where like a bunch of black people were hanging out, and I think they say it's like the 60s or something, and a bunch of people locked the barn that they were all having a party in and set it on fire, and Leroy and his friend Dick escaped, and they escaped into water, and they saw it just picking people off. So they know that something is up. And he tells Mike to basically, be safe. And he knows that Pennywise orchestrated the disaster. Like he caused those people to do that. And he saw them drag a survivor away. So Mike goes out in the hallway and encounters it. There's like a sheep in the hallway and a fire alarm going off that no one seems to be able to hear. And again, this is another really great scene. And unfortunately, this scene and the scene in the Ironworks are scenes that my friend told me are not in the movie. But some of these encounters with it are fucking awesome. And so Mike sees this sheep and he chases it into the morgue, where he sees the corpse of the bully that Pennywise killed, who kind of rises up and starts taunting him. And then the room slants and starts to force Mike towards Pennywise. But he ends up pulling the real fire alarm, and that alerts everybody in the room, returns to normal, and everybody's just like, oh, this kid's crazy. So Mike just ends up running out of the hospital. But Travis sees him and chases him in his car. They're walking around. It's like the 4th of July, and they're destroying mailboxes with fireworks. And oh, that kid got me beat up. So even though I'm the idiot, so let's go get him. So they start chasing Mike, and that ends up leading them to the other group of kids, and they're all just sitting there watching fireworks and stuff. And this turns into one of the more entertaining scenes of the movie. They start basically having a firework war. They're trying to save Mike, so they're all shooting fireworks at the bullies, and then that leads to them getting out, and they're throwing M80s and blowing holes in the ground and stuff. So the kids are like, Jesus Christ, and they're running. And they make it to the pier, and they end up, there's a dilapidated house on the pier, and they go inside, and basically they're trying to escape the bullies, and they see a one of these boards on this window is gone, and it falls clearly because Pennywise caused it to happen. So they all kind of run in through the boarded up window, and then the bullies, they try to look inside, but they can't find them. The board is suddenly back, so now they're trapped in this house. It's oh shit. And then one of the kids is like, oh man, I didn't tell anybody, but I saw it in this house as a clown. So they're trying to get out of the house. They're in the basement, and they grab some weapons, and they go up to the first floor, and the front door is nailed shut, and they notice there's a bunch of ravens on the second floor balcony. But they all go up the second floor, and there's oh, if there's birds, there must be an open window. So they find the open window, and as they're all going out, the floor breaks, and I believe it's Eddie. Yeah, Eddie falls through back to the first floor, and Will is still inside. Will and Mike. And so they're like, oh no, what do we do? Like, we can't leave him. But all the other kids are like, no, we have to go. So Will and Mike are like, well, we got to help Eddie. So they're trying to help him. And Eddie fell into this room. And there's all this like covered furniture and a covered refrigerator. And then all of a sudden blood starts leaking out of the refrigerator and starts to cover the floor. And then Pennywise ends up coming out of the fridge. And he's like, Eddie closes his eyes and Pennywise is like, open your eyes. You know, basically he wants him to see the fear before he kills him, but Eddie won't do it. And Will and Mike they're trying to pull the mattress off the bed on the second floor so they can use it. But they see, like, they move it and they see the corpse of a dead child. So they fall into the hole and land on Pennywise, which is kind of a comical scene. So now it's the three of them in the room and Pennywise is kind of stalking them. But then Beverly starts shooting fireworks from the outside, like through the windows. And they like hit Pennywise and this causes him to retreat. And then they all end up escaping and they bring Eddie to his mom, who freaks out because she's like crazy and he's a hypochondriac and stuff. And then they see that she was watching the TV and that the one-armed man from earlier, remember I told you, he was arrested as the child killer. But they're like, no, like it's it. We just saw him and stuff. So the plot thickens, as some might say. And then all of a sudden we jump to August, but it's the 1800s. And we tell a story about a guy who goes into a saloon and basically murders a bunch of people with an axe. And we see Pennywise playing the piano. And then we find out it's just Ben telling a story. And it's basically like, you know, obviously Pennywise has been around for a long, long time. This is from the history of Derry. And we need to do something. He's not going to stop. So Will's back at his house, and he finally confronts his parents and ends up getting hit by his mom. And Will goes outside and is like taunting it, looking at the sewer where Georgie was taken. And then that's when he starts to put it together that it is using the sewers. So Beverly, everybody's like getting ready to go to Stan's bar mitzvah. And Beverly ends up getting assaulted by her dad. And he's basically like, yeah, I heard you're bleeding now. And he starts to undo his pants and she ends up fighting him off and hitting him on the head with the top of the toilet tank and then locking him in the bathroom. And so they all end up at Stan's bar mitzvah. And while this is going on, Travis is like shooting his dad's gun with his bully friends, and his dad comes home and is all pissed off and beats his ass and like shoots the gun around his feet, and that pisses him off. And then he's like, yeah, or he actually pisses his pants. And his dad's like, yeah, clean yourself up and get back inside. And then Travis notices something on his mailbox, which is a balloon, and he has a package, and it's the knife, and it gives it to him. And it's very clear that Pennywise starts to control Travis. And Travis goes in and kills his dad. Like, his friends come in and he's like stabbed his dad all over the place. There's blood everywhere. And he's sitting there holding his dad's gun. He's like, well, it's my gun now. So yeah, they're all at the bar mitzvah. And after it's all said and done, Will is like, hey, it's in the sewers. We need to go in there and kill it. So they all go to Will's house and they kind of weapon up, grabbing whatever they can. They get, like a sledgehammer, a hubcap for a shield, a hockey stick carved into a stake, a chainsaw, which seems a little excessive for kids. And then they all go in the sewers, or they go to the ironworks, basically, where the bully was killed. But Travis shows up, and he's shooting at him, and his friends are with him, and why would his friends be hanging out with them? Like, when they saw him kill his dad, it doesn't really make sense. You could say it's under threat because he does threaten them, but it's like, come on, man. Just like, you can get away from him. So they end up entering into the ironworks, and where there's supposed to be like a tunnel to the sewer, it's all walled off. And there's actually a warning by Pennywise. And this is something that was in the original movie. I believe it's in the book, and I like it. But basically, I like the idea that Pennywise is afraid of them. And it's like he's afraid, but he uses his fear as like a threat. Like, it's written on the wall in blood. It says, "Stop now or I'll kill you all. Word to the wise from Pennywise." And that's when they find out that Pennywise has a name. They're like, oh, shit. It has a name. But yeah, it's like it's something in the original version. Like it is clearly afraid of the power they have together, but it's still just gonna be like, nah, man, I'm gonna kill you. So don't be stupid, right? And that's a fun thing. I like that. Like a bunch of kids can make this monster afraid, which makes it. When I watch the original, I'll just talk about that when I talk about the original version, but and maybe when they get to the sequel. But yeah, I love the idea of it being afraid and using its fear as threats. So they crawl into this room. They end up getting through that wall. They like pull out some stones and kick it down. And Travis is in close pursuit with his bully friend. And they end up having to crawl through this tunnel that becomes extremely claustrophobic. And they end up coming out to the other side, where there's like a pool of water that's covered in like a membrane, and underneath this membrane is a bunch of spiders, which I assume this is kind of like an egg sac, because if we've seen the original It, we all know what he is and turns into at the end. But yeah, it's like, is this an egg sac? Are these his little children? There are a bunch of little spiders in there, but this is my thing of nightmares. I fucking hate spiders. So the way they picture the scene is like, oh, if they take off their shoes and walk across, it won't break. So they're walking across this membrane, and they're like saying that like every time they take a step, that like spiders are like underneath the membrane, are huddling where their feet are and stuff. So Travis is trying to follow them through, and just as they're getting to the other side, Travis sends in his bully friend, because he's too big to fit through the hole, but he sends his bully friend in there. And like his bully friend gets to the other side with the knife, and he's like, hey man, this dude's crazy, like let me come with you. But with the knife, he actually poked through the membrane, and he ends up getting pulled in and devoured by spiders, which is like, oh Jesus Christ. It's like really horrifying just to even picture. So yeah, and then the other spiders chase Travis away. So the kids go deeper into the sewers, and they find an area, which I screenshotted this because I want to pull it up from the script, because the way they describe it, it sounds really cool. So I'm just going to read this right from the script. It says, Will, Ben, Bev, Mike, Eddie, Stan, and Richie. God, see how many characters there are? Stumble from the dark into a massive, soaring, subterranean, Pantheon-like hall, sewer water streaming past their feet. In the center of the floor is a massive oculus, open to what appears to be the edge of infinite space. The water from the sewers flowed down into 7 channels around this opening, ending at 7 waterfalls that fall upwards into a reflecting pool that covers much of the ceiling, surrounding a stone island with a crypt-type structure. The whole cavern seems to be lit from within, a sickly, pulsing ambient light coming from everywhere and nowhere. Yeah, so basically picture like a mirror on the floor, but instead of seeing the reflection of the ceiling, they're seeing like an island in the middle of a pond, and there's like water flowing into it, and it's awesome. And so they basically jump into this and end up in the water around this island, and it kind of implied that they're in like another dimension at this point, the dimension where it comes from, if you know anything about the books and stuff like that. So as they're in the water, they get attacked, presumably by it, but it could be just another creature. It's never really implied, but let's just assume it's Pennywise. And it's kind of like a giant squid monster, but it doesn't really get to them. They end up fighting it off and swimming to this little island, which is basically the entrance to a crypt, and it's crypt. Pennywise. I don't know why I keep calling it it. It's Pennywise's crypt. So there's like a little door, and they open it, and Will is the first one to go in, and the door snaps shut, snaps the rope, and Will falls to the ground. And he lights a flare, but it's extremely dark, and we see Pennywise, and they talk about him. His limbs are all backward, and he's kind of hanging on the wall like a spider, is how they say it. If you know anything about it, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so it's kind of like a one-on-one confrontation with Will and Pennywise, and it's a great moment. Like all the moments where it appears are the best moments of the movie. This being one of them, being the end, and it's him kind of taunting him, and then right before he goes to kill him and eat him, an arrow shoots into his mouth from Beverly. She had got the door open. Beverly's really the hero of this script. But all the kids jump in, and they all just start attacking it with their weapons, and as I said, they got a chainsaw, they got a hockey stick, and all this shit. And Will picks up his baseball bat and he goes after him, and they fuck him up, and they just beat the shit out of him. And he starts going, wait, and all of a sudden he turns into Georgie and is pleading to Will, like, you're hurting us. We're inside here. We're all floating here, and you're hurting us. And Will obviously is starting to buy into it. And they're saying, like, it's not Georgie. It's it. You have to kill it. Don't listen to it. But the thing that snaps him out, and this is something I forgot to mention in the beginning. So Will and Georgie have a call. And this is something that comes back multiple times throughout the script. So in the very beginning, while Will is upstairs and Georgie's going to the basement, like, Will sends out basically like a whistle, and Georgie responds with like another different kind of whistle. And that the same thing happens when Will gets led into the basement in the middle of the script. And then the same thing happens again here. Will lets out his call and Georgie responds, but the call isn't exactly right, and that's what snaps him out. And so he has a flare lit, and he just calls for, aerosol, and I think it's Beverly, sprays into the flare, and they set it on fire, and he just burns to death. And they're done. They killed it. A bunch of kids killed a monster, and it's great, and it's believable. I wish there was a little more description as to what goes on during the battle, because they all just seem to swarm it, and then it's over. Like, maybe it's dealt with a little quick. But this is like a 134-page script, so... there's kind of a lot going on. So yeah, then it's time to escape. Like, they kill it, so everything starts to collapse. This is weird because they don't show how they escape. Like, they end up getting back to the sewers. They don't show how that happens. They come to like a grate, and they seem trapped, and like, we got to find a way out. And then it just is a scene where they say Beverly holds each one of their faces, and then all of a sudden they just like pop up out of the river. It's like, it honestly feels like a page is missing. So I don't know what that's supposed to be. So I will say this. In the book, and this is kind of a big deal, they get lost in the sewers, and they're kind of starting to, fall apart at the seams. And then Beverly has sex with all of them to unite them. Like, they're all united by this one thing. And it's like, okay, that's weird. A bunch of kids having sex. And it's already been confirmed that stuff is not going to be in the movie. You couldn't possibly put a bunch of teenagers having sex like that in the movie. Or younger than teenagers. That would be weird. So yeah. I'm wondering if that's just their weird way of interpreting that. But it honestly feels like, oh, she's going to hold all their faces, and then they teleport out of there. So I don't... Like, I read it 3 times just trying to understand. Like, it's kind of the one misstep of the script. Just like, oh, like, they're just out now. And that's just something you have to accept. Which it's not a big deal. It's not damning to it at all. But it is just weird. It wasn't something I expected. I didn't quite understand it. But yeah, it just kind of happens. And so that, they escape, and they get back to the shore, and then they swear a blood oath that if it ever comes back, promise that they will return to destroy it once and for all. Which, is exactly how I thought the movie would end. And then we get a little bit of wrap up. Travis, whose hair is now stark white for some reason, assuming because of his connection with it. And the police are banging down his door, and they find his dad all dead. And obviously some bad shit happened there, and he gets arrested. Mike's dad dies. And, he's like, oh, but we stopped it. But it's like, remember what your dad said. Like, things happen in cycles. Hint, hint. And, just, his dad died, but it, paves the way for better things. And, Will, his family, they're kind of I don't want to say like recharging, but they're doing better. They're not ignoring him anymore, and they're packing up for the vacation that they always go on every year, and that they weren't planning on to originally. And all the kids chip in, and they get Will a gift, which is a camera. And they're like, hey, we hear that area is beautiful this time of year. Be sure to take some pictures. And they all just kind of have this, like heartfelt goodbye. And then Will and his parents are driving off, and then a balloon floats into the camera and pops. And that's the end of it. Now, I know this is different from the movie, but I will say I fucking loved this script. I was so engaged the whole time. I love all the encounters with it. I'm really bummed out that a lot of these don't seem to be in the movie. I only asked my friend about a couple of them, and he said no. Some of them I can see from the trailer that are different. Like the scene in the house seems to happen, but it seems a little different. I'm excited about that. Obviously, the sewers, the trailer does show them in the sewers. I'm really into it. I can't wait to see the movie. I hate that it's going to be so long before I can. But this script was like really fucking good, and if this version came out, like it has some weird dialogue at some points and stuff like that, I would have loved it. I wish I knew more of the story of why Cary Fukunaga left. I know he did a True Detective. Maybe that had something to do with it. But maybe after season 2 came out, they're like, hey, maybe we don't want you. I haven't seen season 2 yet, but I actually plan on watching season 2 of True Detective first, and then going back to the first one to try to get some perspective. I'm going to try that little experiment. But yeah, that's it. I thought it was really great. I can't wait to see the movie. Like, I honestly feel like you can watch the old movie, you can watch the new movie, you can read this script, and you can read the book, and you're going to get completely different experiences and unique experiences with each one. And I think that's awesome, because reading this script, like a little spoiler alert, I didn't like the original movie. I know a lot of people hold it up there as like, this is a classic horror film, but I saw it for the first time in 2017. And to me, it's just like, I respect film as an art, but even like in 1990, there were much better made horror movies. So I don't know why people like that. I understand people like Pennywise and Tim Curry, and I think he's funny and stuff, but that's not what I was looking for out of that movie. I wanted it to be scary, and it was the most boring, laughable thing. I'm not going to get too much into it because I'm going to do a whole podcast on it. But there's ideas that I love in this story, and then like reading the script the whole time, I was like, man, I really want to read the book now. So I definitely think I'm going to do that, even though it's like the size of 2 Bibles. But I highly recommend this script. It shouldn't be too hard to track down. Just remember the writers, and it's really good. I'm even if the movie is like half of what is in this script, I still think it'll be great. But I'm excited to see it, and of course, when I see it, we will talk about it. A lot of my friends have already seen it, so I'll try to get someone on for we'll do a spoiler review thing about it. But that's going to be it for it. It was a really great script. I'll be interested to see how different it is. That's kind of the fun of doing these ones for movies that are out. We've only covered a couple of those, this being one of them. So I'm pretty excited to see the differences. And if you know anything that's different, or if you have any opinions, be sure to let us know. You can email us at shelvedfilmpodcast@gmail.com. It's the best way to get a hold of us. Or you can even reach us on Twitter at Shelved Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. We actually get quite a few comments on our YouTube channel. I've had a lot of talk on our Skyfall podcast, so if you want to kind of follow a little conversation that's been going on there, not Skyfall, Spectre, sorry, the James Bond one, we talk about what we would want for the future of Bond in the comments, and we had some differing opinions and stuff, so it was an interesting conversation, and thank you to you listeners who are commenting, and I love interacting with you guys on YouTube. Even if we have different opinions, they're all valued. So, keep on keeping on. Be sure to leave us a review on iTunes. That's the best way to help the show. And you can do it right on your phone. You don't even have to go through all this pressure to do it. You just type in Shelved in the search, and there's a review tab right there. You can just do it. So we would appreciate that. But that's going to be it for it. I am hoping to do the last Star Wars commentary for next week's episode. If not, I will have another script ready, possibly another solo script. If it is, I think it'll be a video game related one because I've been really wanting to do a video game podcast. I do for the week after. I think we're going to be covering a spy movie with bringing back Eric Zisselman, who's our first ever guest and has been on some of my favorite episodes. So he's got a script that he's reading. I have sent out a script to 2 other people who are in the process of reading. So we're getting those all nailed down. But that's going to be it for today's episode. Be sure to check out those social medias. Be sure to leave a review and be sure to check back next week. And thank you all for listening.